Hello and welcome. This is Working Class to World Class. But before we go any further, I do have a little favour of you. If you could hit that follow or subscribe button, then that would be a massive help. Thank you. In this episode, I chat with a really inspiring lady who started out life as that working class kid who sadly got bullied at school. But through years of grit, determination and that working class sass and hustle, she broke through the barriers into the music industry and is now the founder of a really successful music PR company. She is also living proof that if you want to achieve your dreams, then you can do just that, because this year she is a judge for the Brit Awards. Breaking through the barriers of adversity. I'm Lynn Lester, and this is Working Class to World Class. So Bee, it's an absolute pleasure that you're joining me today to be part of what I hope has been so far quite an exciting podcast series for lots of people obviously tuning in. So so how have you found it? Have you been tuning in?
Yes, I have. No, I've loved it. I mean, some of the guests and their stories are just so mind-blowing and I think really super inspiring as well. I think it's great to know that you can come from that place and be where you are now and obviously continue to grow as well. And I think hopefully it'll just give so many people the confidence and the support and the aspiration to know you can actually change the course of your future. I certainly kind of felt that from hearing some of the stories and yeah, so hopefully we can inspire that some more as well.
Amazing. Well, today you are going to inspire people because you're up. It's going to be your story. And before we get into it, though, could you just sort of give people a sense of who you are? Who is Bee and what does Bee do?
Yeah, okay. So I currently run have founded a music PR agency. So I've been running that for 7 years now. So we're just about to come into our 7th year. And it's been quite the wild ride, and it's been a really successful venture as well, which has been amazing financially, but also in terms of growth across the team and what we've achieved with our artists as well. But it started from humble beginnings. It literally was from my kitchen table as a real kind of soft idea about trying to do my own thing, and it just grew and grew. So, and I also did it whilst I was pregnant as well, so it all happened at the same time. It was all a very, very crazy mix of having a newborn and also running my own business at the same time. And as you can imagine. But yeah, I mean, 7 years on, we have a team of 40. We're scattered all over the world. We work with around 100 artists a month, and we're working with all the biggest major labels globally as well with their independent artists. So I'm really happy and I'm really grateful for where I am at the moment.
Well, I have to ask a question because I'm sure people are watching and they're going, oh my God, who is the most famous person you've worked with?
Yeah, so we work with lots of independent artists, and that's where we really excel and we're really, really excited. But then in terms of sort of big artists we've worked with everyone from Kid Rock to Snoop Dogg to Scouting for Girls to Kelly Lee. We're working with a huge rapper at the moment called Lil Woozy. We do lots of that great stuff. We've worked with Mark Stoner from The Killers, but where we get really excited is where we've got an artist that has amazing music but no one's heard of them, and they've not had any press coverage, they've not had any playlist coverage, and that's where we do really well in terms of getting them to that next level and then above. And that's where we pride ourselves. I think when I first started running the agency, I was a bit like, why are we working with huge artists? It's not fair. But it's because where we've really firmly placed ourselves is a real major player with the independent space, in the independent space.
Cool. I mean, it must be nice, I guess, because regardless of their background, you're seeing someone coming from a sort of unknown entity to building to being something. So you're almost like the proud mom. You're standing there probably going, we help them do it. They've got the talent, we've got the know-how. So that sounds cool. So obviously, I mean, obviously from the offset, you're very successful. You do your own thing. I mean, that's cool to run your own business to start with. You do your own business. You work with artists. You're doing really well, as you say, whether it be through financially, through business acumen. But obviously, that's your goal at the moment, and your aim to, obviously to sort of progress that. But if we take you back to many years, and probably I imagine this was probably never on your radar. So if we can just reset, well, where were you born and brought up?
Yeah, okay. So I was born in Bedford. So that's literally about an hour north of London. And that's kind of where I was raised. Actually, we lived in Bedford for the first few years of my life. And then we moved out to a tiny village just on the outskirts, which was very white, very middle class. And we lived on the only tiny little council estate that was in that village, basically. And so, yeah, so started off with really humble beginnings, and things like, you know, the music industry wasn't really even my radar. I mean, the only sort of window into it was through watching the Brit Awards as a kid, you know, at home, and then like picking up things like smash hits or whatever, or listening to Radio 1. So it just seemed like a whole nother world, which was so far away from where I was and what I was doing and thinking about.
That's amazing. It's funny. I've actually been to Bedford, so I make it sound as if I get out of Glasgow, and I managed to go one day. Then my aunt and uncle used to live down that way, so they took me into the shopping complex. And yeah, originally they stayed in Blackpool, then they went to down to Bedford. So anyway, it's a long story, but it's really nice.
Yeah. So, well, Italy. Italy. Bedford's got a huge Italian community. I don't know if you noticed that when you came. And that's how my family kind of got to Bedford, basically. So my grandfather came over in would have been like the 50s or something, 40s, and then was scouted to come over and work. And he ended up working at the London Brickworks, which is just a little bit outside of Bedford. And then sort of hundreds of young Italian men came over. And that's where they planted their roots, basically. And they all moved to the nearest biggest town, which was Bedford. And that's kind of how our family evolved within Bedford, basically.
That's a pretty good story. Gosh, so you've got Italian blood then, have you? That's nice.
Yeah. So it's quite fun during kind of World Cup big tournament times in Bedford, because there's a massive community and everyone kind of gets out into the streets and cheers and waves flags. Yeah, it's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it does. It sounds great. And so for you then, so you're talking about, obviously you've got this sort of middle class area and you're in the working class part council estate kind of section. Yeah. So describe life then so that people can understand what was a kind of everyday for you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was very much, I mean, you know, it was quite idyllic in the sense that we had like a really nice village that we lived in. And it was really pretty. And I had two brothers. So it was quite a busy kind of family household. My parents used to love kind of hosting dinner parties and have friends around for barbecues. The guitars would be out and people would be singing and that kind of thing. So there was certainly a lot of love and really good memories about that time. But I suppose one thing I noticed, sort of, you know, me and my brothers compared to the others, is that we had very little money compared to the people that we were friends with in the village, who all had like, you know, Mercs and Beamers on their driveways, and that wasn't ours at all. And you know, just little things, even things like when Mum used to pack like my lunch for like a day out with the school, like what I had compared to everyone else was like really embarrassing. Just things like that, you know, and not being able to afford to like go on like, you know, fancy extracurricular activities, and even things like not being able to afford like new uniform. Like my mum used to go and buy our uniform secondhand from like there was like a special shop in the local town and stuff like that. So all of that.
So I guess, you know, it sounds to me as if from quite a young age, actually, you noticed that you were different, but different in a nuanced kind of way. Yeah, you're still the same kid. But did you ever find that other people picked up in the fact that you didn't have as much, or was it more you, or did they sort of give you a hard time comment?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like in sort of lower school, that was definitely something that I was picked on or bullied for, that we had, like, you know, say for example, our house and stuff wasn't like the nicest looking house from the outside. I mean, my dad used to take pride in like mowing the lawn and things like that, but in terms of like our car, like my dad drove a Skoda, and I could not believe, of all the cars, I think they're not so bad these days, but back then it was like the worst car for your family to have, especially when all your friends have got like really fancy cars and stuff. So that was, I used to hate getting into the car if he'd ever pick me up from somewhere. And yeah, just things like, I mean, but my mum, because my mum's sort of background of Italian cooking and stuff, we had a lot of Italian based food, and now I'm like, oh my god, that was actually pretty amazing. You know, we had like really good sourdough bread, but back then it was like kind of picked on, so I was sort of picked on for that as well. But that was quite standard, like for Italian families to have that sort of thing. But yeah, so definitely there was that element from the village schools that I was in. Is like, oh, you guys don't have a lot of money, you're kind of poor or whatever, and like, look at ours. And even things like kind of toys and stuff like that, like I didn't have nowhere near what my friends had, and that used to really upset me as well. Like even things like, you know, the Sega Mega Drive or the Nintendo or whatever, like I didn't have that at all, and I, like, you know, I wanted that so bad. um so yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, it sounds as if, yes, you had that kind of hard time, but I guess I would love to have a friend that has connections to an Italian cook. It does sound pretty cool to be well treated.
Yeah. I think
So,
now, looking back now, I'm like, yeah, that was how lovely was that, you know, we had all that kind of considered exotic foods in the house or whatever, but at the time all you want is like Marmite sandwiches on like the cheapest whitest bread or whatever.
yeah, just to fit in. I think, when you're younger, and particularly if you're a poorer working class kid compared to others, it's about the fitting in. So, when people would sort of say things to you, what can you remember what they would say to you?
Yeah, gosh, what would they say? It was just, I think weirdly, some of it I've actually kind of blocked out, because it's like, yeah, it was stuff that I didn't want to remember, but it was things like probably, oh, you're a bit of a jippo, because of like, the kind of the car your dad drives, or like, yeah, just like, I don't know, so some of the stuff maybe that was like outside the house, like my dad was always like selling bits and pieces and whatnot. So yeah, I think that was probably pretty hard hitting actually. But weirdly, like the ones that were like the so-called bullies, the one girl, for example, we ended up becoming like the bestest of friends. So it was like this really weird thing where for the first year or two she was like totally up my grill and being really mean, and then I kind of challenged her about it, and we then turned a massive corner. It was really weird. It was almost like, so it was a kind of, out of it came a really positive friendship. But yes, but the first few years was pretty horrible actually. And I definitely felt very different from all of the other children in the kind of
Yeah.
in the area.
So I guess what that
Yeah.
does is it gives you that sense of awareness, doesn't it? So I think from a young age, when you feel different, I mean, I personally think that instills something in you that's actually quite special in, working life later, which we can explore in a wee second. But like, so for
Yeah.
you then, I mean, well, do you think that actually, so see, I'll open that up. Do you think that that's molded who you are?
Definitely. I think I was always, weirdly actually, because when I was sort of reflecting on this conversation before we were about to have it, um, it's always been an area of my life I've been quite embarrassed about. Like it's probably one of the few times I've actually been quite open about my background. I've never really sort of opened up about the fact that I've come from a working class family, that we grew up on a council estate. Like it was like the worst thing to ever, even like up until a year ago, and I'm 43 now, it's just because I guess I just haven't met very many people from a similar background, so I kind of just kept it really quiet. And even maybe amongst some of my bestest friends, I haven't really kind of revealed kind of childhood I had and the house that I grew up in and things like that, because most of the people that I am really, really good friends with have come from like what seemed like a perfect family, you know, in a big detached house with like a few cars or whatever. So I've almost worried that it kind of will devalue their impression of me. So yeah, I feel like I'm really kind of crossing really interesting territories by even kind of opening up about it. It's really weird. And I think it's from you sort of talking to me about the podcast series you were launching, I was like, wow, she's kind of making it cool, you know. So but yeah, absolutely. I think now that I reflect, and certainly my dad, and he kind of created a real hustle mentality in us, me and my brothers, and I think that was like a bit of a superpower from coming from where, you know, where we grew up and how and the kind of environment we were in, and he, you know, he actually turned a corner in our lives in our childhood, and that was quite inspiring as well, sort of realizing actually you can turn things around and you can start to actually make a better life for yourselves, and I saw him do that as I kind of got into my early teens and stuff, and I was almost off to uni, and I saw that and thought, wow, okay. So that was really inspiring.
So what was it he did? How did he turn it around?
Yeah, so for as long as I can remember, like I don't really remember my dad doing very much when I was a kid in terms of like work and stuff. He's always a bit of a wheeler dealer, and then he started, so he launched his own business, so he started doing window cleaning, and that just kind of grew and grew and grew, and then from that he launched, he had his own kind of burger hot dog van, so he used to go and do that at big festivals and things like that, and again that became really successful for him, and then he was able to start buying in houses and sort of like flipping them over and turning a profit. So I sort of saw him sort of start something. He was always trying to start something new, you know, and I think then he found his thing that allowed him to start making some money, and I found that really inspiring actually. And he always used to say to us like, you know, to really make a mark on this world, you've got to think of your own thing, you've got to do your own thing, you know. And I always had that in the back of my mind. I think even when I left uni and went on to do various roles in the corporate world, I always sort of thought, what is my own thing, you know, how am I going to make my money? And so yeah, so I always use that as a sort of, that was always the backbone of my source of inspiration for sure.
Wow, that's a really lovely story. It's almost like, you know, I guess the rule here is it doesn't really matter what you do. It could be a hot dog stand, it could be window cleaning. It's really immaterial. It's all about that fulfillment, doing it for yourself, not relying on others. And I guess you make your own world through who you are. So that's a really lovely story. So good on your dad. It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And so for you,
Thanks.
no, it's honestly, you must have been so proud. And you know, for you then going through your kind of school years, you know, and I had a similar, by the way, just to sort of put this out here, I had a terrible time at school. I was bullied badly for many years. I would say probably for about 5 years of my schooling. So I know what it was like. And to be fair, we were all working class kids, so it was nothing to do with a class thing. It was just to do with just pure badness, really. So I know how that feels as an adult. You can sympathize. At the time, it's just complete torture. So I guess when you're sort of building through that, and you're building a backbone as well, because you're surviving every day. And so, you know, what then happened when you obviously said you went to uni. So at school, did you get quite good grades? Like, what kind of kid were you?
Yeah, so I was actually a pretty good kid. I sort of certainly in my house, I was the one that would sit myself down and do my own homework. My mum and dad didn't tell me to do any of that. They didn't think like that. It wasn't part of their kind of mindset. Like with me and my daughter, I'm like, right, okay, finish school, take your homework out. What have we got to do? But my mum wasn't like that. Neither was my dad, really. So I was the one that kind of almost sometimes parented them a little bit, and was like, oh, you need to write my note for this, and sometimes because my mum, being from Italian background, actually her first language was Italian, and she got to the UK when she was like 20. So, and she had me when she was like 18. So for the first, so she was literally learning as she was going, basically, with me, and learning the language. So when I was like 8, I'd actually write my own like notes to the teacher on behalf of my mum, for like if I'd had the day off or something, and it'd be like the sick note or whatever for my mum, because my mum couldn't really write it like proper English. So it was just mad to think that. But no, I was a really good kid. I was really studious. I kind of, yeah, would just get my head down and do my work. And I kind of knew I had a goal. I was like, I'm going to go to uni. That's what I want to do. I'm going to take myself to uni. I'm going to, I'm going to sort of do it all myself financially. And I did. I basically paid for it all myself. And yeah, I didn't have anything off anyone really. So yeah.
So did you then have a job at school to afford that, or was it more bursary led?
Yeah.
Like how
Oh
does it
yeah.
work?
Yeah. I had 3 jobs when I was at school. So I had so I used to do, actually I had 2 paper rounds. So I did one on Thursday and one on a Sunday. And then I worked in a pizzeria on Saturday and Friday night. And then on a Saturday day, I went and helped on a market stall in the middle of Brighton town. From like 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. So I was quite busy as a young teen. So it's probably about like 13, 14. I was already like working, and I just wanted to earn money basically. And I remember actually, because I'm really wanting a pair of Nike Huaraches when I was like 13. I say to my dad and mum, I really want these. And my dad was like, you're going to have to go and earn them. You're going to have to literally go and get yourself a job. And he took me around to like some of his local friends restaurants and things, and then I got the job basically. So I was kind of used to earning money fairly early on. And at that age, when you're earning, I don't know what it would have been back then, maybe like 70, 80 quid as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old back in the 90s, was quite a lot of money actually. So I was always used to sort of getting what I wanted, because I afforded it myself.
Yeah.
um,
Wow, that's a pretty big undertaking. So, I mean, it's quite young. Like most
yeah,
people or most kids I know either don't want a job, but to have 3 blooming egg, that's pretty
yeah,
impressive.
it's true. And like sometimes I sort of look at my daughter and think, gosh, you literally don't want for anything. You have everything you could possibly want. And I think, oh my God, am I going really wrong here? Maybe the way I was raised is the right way. So that's a constant tussle in my head, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
But it definitely made me hunt for what I wanted. Like I always knew that nothing, well, the way I was raised was nothing comes to you basically. It doesn't just and if you want something, if you want to go on a holiday or you want to go to uni, you have to save, and you have to raise your own money basically.
Yeah, if you want it, it's up to you to go and get it. And so I guess when you obviously went through school, so you're working, you get 3 jobs going, what did you decide to apply for and eventually get into uni?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a weird one. So my maths teacher in A level said that, well, I was really good at maths, and he was like, I think you should be an accountant. So I kind of went with his guidance and applied for all of the accountancy degrees, and got into Brighton Uni. And I hated it. I remember starting the course, starting the first year and doing the modules, and it was just way over my head mathematically, and it just wasn't an area that I kind of thrived in. So I actually did the first year and failed the whole year. So I got to the end of the year, and I remember my tutor at the time going, I just don't think this is quite the course for you, is it? I was like, no. And thinking that was it. That was the end of my sort of uni career. And he suggested that I do a business and marketing degree. So he just saw that he felt my skill set and my lent itself better to marketing, PR, and communications and things. And he was right, and that's what I did. So I started again basically. So I almost had to abandon everything I knew in year 1 of uni, that whole kind of first year of friends, and start again. And I felt like I needed that reset, because I'd kind of started that first year and not really liked it. At uni, I didn't really feel like I bonded with anyone in the accountancy degree. I didn't really feel like I found my friends. So starting again was actually amazing. It was kind of what I needed, I think.
That sounds great. I mean, it's good. You know, the thing is, it's good when you get a leader, someone who's in charge, who can then say, look, if this is not how you want to proceed, what about this as an alternative? Because often people would, I mean, I can imagine loads of people would just drop out, wouldn't they? And then go, right,
Yeah.
what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
So, I mean, after that then, so obviously it's, you know, you did pretty well. So talk me through kind of from that stage onwards, what then happened.
Yeah, so I left university, so got 2-1, left uni, and then just deep dived into the working world. And I think I just applied for anything, basically, anything that had sort of a slight marketing twist to it. It was quite a competitive space back then. I mean, all the big brands, I wanted to work for all of the biggest brands. So like Unilever, Cadbury's, all those sorts of things. I applied for all of the major FMCG brands and got nothing, none of the internships or anything like that. So I basically started working for just a small marketing consultancy, but based in Brighton, and then sort of bounced around after that. But I was never happy. Like I never really liked what I was doing. I think I just just thought, well, I'm working and I'm kind of doing marketing, so just carry on with it, and but I always had that feeling of dread on a Monday morning or Sunday night. It was like, oh, I'm about to go and start, another working week doing something I really, really don't like, working with people that don't inspire me. And it wasn't until I'd actually gone to my first music festival, and that was at the Great Escape in Brighton, that I was like, oh my goodness, like this is the industry that I want to be in. This is amazing. This is exciting. It's passionate. It's everything that I wasn't feeling at that time, basically. And I decided that at that point I was going to make it my mission to get into the music industry. And at this point already, I was kind of in my late 20s, early 30s. So, quite a few years had gone by since I'd graduated, and it seemed quite late in my career to be thinking about a U-turn. But I decided I wanted to get into the industry, and I was going to do whatever I could to get in, basically. So after that, so from that point on, I applied for like maybe hundreds of jobs in the music industry. I even put myself forward to work for free for loads of companies, even though financially I really couldn't afford it. But then I just decided to sort of crack into other ways. So I started, because I was really good at creative writing, so I thought, right, I'm gonna see if I can do some music blogging. So I basically started writing for everyone from like NME to Clash to Billboard, and I just did lots of free writing gigs because I just thought, well, this will get my name slowly in there. And then from that, I hosted my own radio show. So I had like a new music radio show. It's on a digital station, but it was quite popular at the time. And then it literally just grew. So I kept doing other things, and they were all it was all free stuff. None of it paid. I still managed to do my full-time job in the day, and then I do all this stuff at night and weekends and evenings and stuff. But I just thought, what am I, how am I going to actually make this the full leap into the music industry? And it wasn't until I was managing a band, so that was another kind of area I'd got into to try and get into the music industry. We basically started working with a big music PR agency in London. We paid quite a bit of money for an EP campaign that they were supposed to do, and actually they did a really bad job of it. So we hardly got any results back from the campaign. It was quite a disappointing campaign. And the band I was managing at the time, they were like, Bee, look, we've spent all this money and like we've hadn't got nothing to show for it. What can we do? And I just decided to have a go at it myself. So I thought, well, okay, I've got the music. I'll rewrite the press release. I'll start to send it out to all my contacts in the industry, because I had quite a few at that point, having done loads of free stuff. And suddenly, this campaign that seemed like a bit of a flop was suddenly sort of really growing legs, and I was starting to get them interviews and features and radio interviews. It was amazing. Like I suddenly realized actually all it took was a bit of motivation, passion and hard work, and I could suddenly see the results coming through. And that was the start of Liberty. So for example, after that, another band approached me and they were like, oh, I really like what you did with that band. I saw you on social media say this and this, and can you do our next single? We've got a single coming out next month. And I was like, oh no, I'm not doing this for anyone else. It's literally just for the band that I'm managing. And that was it. That was like, so one band turned into 2, turned into 10, 20, 30. And I was suddenly working a full-time job, but like managing like 10 campaigns on the side and like in my spare time. And then I had an epiphany. It was like 2016. And I just thought, I've got to do this, haven't I? This is my chance to actually fully leap into the music space and do what I've dreamt of doing, do my own thing. And it happened. And I kind of saved up 3 months worth of mortgage just to cover me in case it all kind of went bad. And I never needed to touch that, like those savings. It just kind of grew and grew, and it was amazing. And yeah, and then unfortunately at the same time of leaving my corporate role, immersing myself fully into this new kind of world and launching my own thing, I actually found out I was pregnant as well. So that was that made for a really interesting couple of years. That sort of lied ahead, basically trying to do everything with a newborn toddler was pretty insane. I don't recommend it. But yeah, so that's how I kind of fully got the music business, PR business going.
Geez, I mean, off the back of that, I've got so many questions, so many things. I'm like, what? How did you do that? Oh my goodness. So that's a pretty damn good journey and a really, really inspiring story. I do have one question, right? So, I mean, it sounds to me as if you've got a bit clearly the hustle has come in now. So that's what's been triggered. Like, how do you get a gig writing for a music publication when you aren't in the music industry?
I know it's yeah, I think I was just really confident and personable. So I think with me, I had really good communication skills back then, and it was actually being and funny enough, I met the person that gave me my first writing gig. So I was at the Great Escape again a year or two later, and I just ended up hanging out with the right people in the right bar. I ended up hanging out with the MD of Clash magazine at that time, and he went on to then become the MD Vice magazine. But we just hit it off. We got on really well. We drank lots of beer together, hung out most of the weekend, went to quite a few gigs, and then his PA called me up on Monday morning and said he doesn't remember much of the weekend and he needs to write a 3-page piece on for print for the magazine, and it needs to be written up by 4 p.m. today. Can you do it? Basically, and it's your gig. And I was like, yes, hell yes, of course I will. And so that was, there's a bit of luck there, but it, also yeah, I think yeah, so that's how that started. And then it was more meeting people. So I used to also write for a magazine called Spindle magazine, so that was actually launched in Brighton. And I got chatting to the founder, and we hit it off like immediately, and they didn't have a music section, so it was a really cool creative magazine showcasing fashion and art, and they didn't have a music section. I was like, you need a music section, and can I be your music person? And Heather at the time who owned the magazine was like, yeah, all right then, go on, yeah, go for it. And I remember my first interview that I did, and I forgot to press record on my phone, basically. So to sort of had this like hour-long interview that I didn't record at all. It was horrible. But yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Oh my God, that is so cool. And I bet you at this point, I can almost visualize it where you've come through the ranks, from ranks as in school to uni, changing what you're doing, getting into this sort of hustle career at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
And then, I imagine that your parents must have been literally bursting with pride. I mean, is that the case?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think I think they still didn't quite understand what I was doing. I think working in the music industry, I think it's it probably seems a bit smoke and mirrors at times, and certainly, a lot of people don't really understand what music PR is. You have to really break it down. Even musicians sometimes don't really get what it means. So I think they knew I was up to something really great. I mean, initially they were a little bit worried because I was jacking in a really big corporate role. So I was on, like, I don't know, at the time, 70, 80K a year, working within corporate events. So I used to fly all over the world and put on big events and get sponsorship for them. So I was literally sort of saying goodbye to that to start this music PR agency that I had no experience in, and no real clients. So I think they were like, are you sure? But then they could see, they saw that it growing and growing and growing, and I think yeah, of course, yeah, really, they're really proud.
I can imagine your dad saw a bit of him and you, the entrepreneurship.
Oh yeah, I mean, he always used to say that actually to me, that yeah, like, that that's, you're my girl, you're my firstborn, I always knew you'd make it. And you always had that hustle mentality, and he definitely pushed that in me. I think out of me and my brothers, I always say to my brothers, you guys had it lightly. So I think because we've got a weird gap in age. It's like me and my youngest brother, there's 14 years difference. So by the time Daniel came along, like, they had it all sorted and they actually were financially okay. But I always feel like I had it the hardest, basically. But it feels like it really worked for me, and it allowed me to really you know hunt for what I wanted, as I said earlier. But yeah, I was really inspired to just do more and want more, and yeah, and it's still there in my head. Like, I did, I've got to better myself, and yeah, not
Yeah.
sitting
Oh my
comfortably.
goodness. I can imagine as well, you're probably looking back now at the days that you were bullied in that playground, and, what do you think, so, because we're human beings, right? So, well, what goes through your head? You don't want to think about it because you close it off because it's maybe not as nice, but when I'm sure at times you will reflect. Is there
Oh,
anything that you
definitely.
think?
Oh, I mean, weirdly, like, sometimes a bit of a smug feeling, because I kind of, I'm still connected to some of those people on Facebook or whatever, and I know that I'm doing a lot better than most of them. And I know that sounds really smug, but I am. I can see that I am, and I can see the places I've managed to take myself to, and where I'm at in my career. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, wow. So I, sometimes I feel like, actually, yeah, it gave me a superpower that maybe I didn't quite appreciate that I had, but I can also appreciate that it can be the breaking of somebody as well. Being bullied is yeah, like, the thought of, say, any of my nieces or nephews or my daughter having been bullied is just terror, like, really breaks my heart. But it must have made me really resilient, I think, and pretty thick-skinned at times, and really kind of strive for better. I'm pretty sure that that's what it's enabled me to do.
Yeah, that and more by the sounds of it. It sounds to me as if, I think, not only your upbringing with your parents and the way they are, I can imagine having the Italian personality, you've got the entrepreneur, you've got the stuff that happened to you at school. And I can imagine a lot of that forced you into that communicator role, where you're really good at speaking with people, you understand human beings, thoughts, emotions. And that's obviously then, in my view, what probably makes you a good leader. But what would you say, I don't know if you would agree with that, or what from your background do you think makes you a good leader today?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I think having sort of the bags of resilience and grit, for sure. Being a good leader, that personability, coming from a place of real deep empathy. Like, I'm very empathetic with people. I've got a really high EQ, so I really understand emotions, and I can tell when someone's off, or something's sort of simmering away in the background. I'm pretty good at picking up on those sorts of things. I'm a great problem solver, so I think that came from quite a young having quite young parents as well. So both my parents are like in their, well, my mum was 18, my dad was 21 when he had me. So I had to problem solve for them. You know, they I think they were pretty bad problem solvers, right into their sort of mid-30s. And so I'm very good at like figuring out things. And that's actually paid off really well running a business. Also sort of thinking creatively, nothing being a real issue. I feel like because I've experienced quite a lot, you know, it's never that bad, you know, nothing's as bad as it seems. But also giving, you know, allowing people a platform to share how they're feeling and being able to openly and freely communicate with me, I think has been pretty paid off in terms of being a leader, hopefully an inspiring leader.
Yeah. And also being a decent human being, because I can also imagine, and again, you can tell me if this is accurate, but I know from my working class roots, I think the reason partly down to my success is I don't fear people, because all the bad things have already happened. I mean, there could be other bad things clearly, but lots of the bad stuff's already happened. And actually, I think it's molded me to be this person where if I meet someone, whether it be a CEO, whether it be a superstar, whoever it might be, I don't really get that. I have the respect, but I don't have any nervousness because they're a person. I just see them as a human being, flesh and bones, and you've got a heart and you've got a soul and you've got everything else. And I don't know if that's how you see people.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Funny enough, that's taken. I'm definitely there now, absolutely. But like I was like a painfully shy kind of child, and right through to my sort of teens, and even in my sort of 20s, I would never speak up or anything. And I think that confidence has slowly grown and grown and grown, and now I can appreciate that people are just people, and you know, we have to treat each other with respect and kindness, and be empathetic. And you never really know what's going on in people's, you know, shoes. And if someone's pretty nasty or abrupt with you, there's probably stuff going on in the background with them and them mentally. So I think just having a lot more respect for people and understanding of people. But no, that didn't actually, and I wish it did. I wish I was like that from a lot earlier on, but I'm definitely there now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we all have our own journey, don't we? And we always get there eventually. And so for
Yeah.
people that are coming through, is there any advice you would give? So like, you know, if you get someone who's, you know, again, they don't even need to be working class. They could just be in the industry, or they could be doing whatever, but they want a job, but really what they want is a career. And maybe they don't really know where to go yet because they probably haven't figured it out. What would you give them as a piece of advice, do you think?
Yeah, I say, well, for me, I didn't quite know. I knew I wanted to be in the music industry, but I didn't quite know where and what. So my biggest advice is try a bit of everything. Like literally, try a little something of lots of different things, and something will stick. Something will, you know, gain that fire in your belly and make you go, oh my God, this is it. This is what I want to do. And then you can put all your chips on the table, as it were. But you've got to have patience. You've got to be hardworking. You have to be, you know, you've got to put the hours in. You can't expect anything for nothing. And I did a lot of voluntary stuff when I started out. So, and I don't advocate that. Like you know, I totally think that people need to be paid for the time they put in, but I actually did it a lot for free, because some of the stuff I was offered was, you know, it was unpaid, but it gave me the experience and it allowed me to kind of keep growing and growing and growing. And I think be kind to yourself. Try not to look at what other people are up to, because that can be, you know, a really ugly benchmark as well. I think you do you, stay in your lane, kind of map out your next couple of years, like actually do a roadmap and stepping stones. I want to get here, this is how I think I'll get there. Certainly places like the music industry they're a difficult industry to get into, but try and get about, try and meet people. I use LinkedIn massively, and I think it applies across most industries. LinkedIn, connect with people, say hello, be polite, champion people that really inspire you in different industries that you might want to get into, and start to make yourself known, and do a little. So for example, with me, what I look for when people try and get into the music industry and get a role with us is I look for that little added extra. So what have they done? Where have they, gone that extra mile? And lots of people come to us with music degrees and whatnot. But I always look at what else did they do whilst they're studying for their music degree. Oh, they launched their own radio show, or they did a podcast, they run a little series, or they did a weekly night. That's little stuff, that I love, because it shows that they've gone and done that bit more than just that, the degree or whatever. You've got to put yourself out there. That's the only way you're going to get the gigs, basically. You have to be known, and you have to be known to be very good at what you do. So just keep going, and just keep trying a little bit of everything. That's
keep going, because I think the thing is, point, and you've said it a few times, a lot of it is not what you know, it's who you know. And whether we like it or not, it's about, you got your writing gig through the editor that was too incoherent, that they didn't remember the next day, to but it's just little serendipity things like that that you will never get being in your home, but you will get out and amongst people. So I think, to me, that's probably like one of the first things I always say to my son, like, mingle with the right people, and and it's also about hanging out with your people, not the false people that maybe you don't want to be part, and you don't want to be like them, but sometimes you have to play the game, and it's just what you do.
It's true.
And the one thing I want to say is actually congratulate you, because just before this, I happened to notice, you're a judge on the Brit Awards this year, is that right?
Yeah. So, oh my God, that was like a real pinch me moment, because obviously at the start of the podcast, I was telling you how from my tiny little council estate house, I used to watch it and just sort of be in awe of the entertainment and the drama and the action that came with the awards, and to then suddenly be playing a major part in the actual award ceremony, and become a judge. So I was one of the judges for this year. So I had to cast a vote across every category. That was just amazing, and just really kind of like quite an emotional kind of 360 for me, I think. And very, very grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, I can imagine it was that pinched me moment, and it's maybe, well, she had the business, well, she had the money, well, she had the the success. I would assume, maybe rightly or wrongly, that moment is when you thought, I've made it now. I've arrived.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. But it's funny actually, because I was reflecting as well about that, and I was like, well, is this it then now? Have I kind of completed the journey? Because I think there's something quite magical about that journey as well, and like kind of being on it, and striving to get to where you want to. So I've done that now, and I mean, last year as well, I did a TED talk, and that was epic on so many levels, because I was that child who couldn't even read a sentence without stuttering. Like, I was never in any school plays, or my confidence was like zero. So again, like, doing that was just such a crazy moment. And so now I'm like, wow, I better set myself some new goals then, hadn't I? Some new personal goals. So thankfully I have. But so very grateful for that, for sure.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you also for talking about the things that were maybe hard, and you probably hadn't prepped yourself for.
I think that's been real therapy there. I think certainly kind of, because I'm part of a mentorship scheme, so I'm part of the Creative Network mentorship scheme, and that has actually been launched to support people from low social backgrounds, basically, economic social backgrounds. So enabling people who don't come from financially fortunate families to be able to sort of get into industries like the music industry and the creative space and things like that. So, and offering really worthwhile mentorship schemes that are mentored by the likes of people like me and whatever. So that's been really a real passion project for me, being able to give back as well. So yeah, so it's been amazing. But thank you so much. I've really enjoyed sharing my story, and I really hope that people will be inspired. And I'm always here if anyone has any questions or fears or worries or needs advice. I'm always here, and I'm very happy to help people. I get lots of LinkedIn emails every day from people asking for tips and tricks, so I'm always offering advice to them.
Amazing. Well, that's what makes you the salt of the earth. So thank you so much. And
thank you.
I'm sure everybody's going to love this one.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lynn.
Bye.
Bye.